Hello everyone. This video will be taking a look at the differences and similarities of barrier or shield healing and pure or regen healing. If you are thinking about taking up the mantle of healer in Final Fantasy XIV, this video might help you decide what type of healer you want to be. Now, I'm not going to be doing a deep dive into each healer and their every unique quality such as MP management or DPS. I will be going over a few things that separate them from each other as well as what makes them all similar. First, let's identify which healers are which. The pure healers, the ones with all the regens, are White Mage and Astrologian. The barrier healers, the ones with all the shields and mitigation, are Scholar and Sage. Each leads to a different style of play. Before we get into that, let's compare each type. Every healer has parallels that we can draw in their abilities. When we get into the two types of healers, we can draw further parallels with each type. Let's look at the similarities of the barrier healers. Both barrier healers have a single target barrier and an AoE barrier. Both have an automatic heal, more on that in a minute, and both have a charged resource system. In both Scholar and Sage's resource system, they both have 3 charges to spend on certain abilities. Some abilities are a single target heal, an AoE heal, and a bubble. Both healers' resource AoE have a longer cooldown where the single target resource heal can spend all 3 charges back to back. I mentioned they both have an automatic heal. This heal is the same but different. Let me explain. Scholar has a pet, a fairy that heals the party using AI. This is where Scholar gets their auto heal. When a party member's HP falls below 100%, the fairy will cast Embrace on that player, healing them for a small amount. Sage have an ability called Cardia. This ability places a permanent buff on a selected party member or the sage itself called Cardian. This buff heals the player for a small amount each time the sage deals damage. Another thing that is the same but different is that bubble I mentioned. Scholar and Sage both have to spend a resource to use their bubble. Scholar's bubble gets placed on the ground for 15 seconds, reduces damage taken by 10%, and adds a regen to whoever is standing in it. It also adds 10 points to the Scholar's Fey gauge. Sage's bubble gets placed on party members for 15 seconds within range, reduces damage by 10%, and adds a regen effect. It also restores the Sage's MP. The same, but different. On the topic of differences, let's name a few things each can do the other cannot. Starting with Scholar, every 2 minutes the Scholar can spread its single target barrier to all party members in range of the target with the barrier. Scholar can increase the movement speed of nearby party members while also reducing damage taken. And Scholar has a debuff that increases the rate a target takes critical hits. Sage has 2 additional single target mitigations in Haima and Torokal. Both are off the global cooldown, by the way. Sage has a personal movement tool, and has 2 additional DPS moves as well in Phlegma and Neoma. The single target AoE barrier I mentioned before are on the global cooldown for both Sage and Scholar. However, Sage's barrier does not have a cast time, while Scholar's does. This is largely due to Sage requiring Eucrasia to be used before the heal turns into a barrier. Despite Sage's barriers being 2 global cooldowns, the recast on Eucrasia, Eucrasian Diagnosis, and Eucrasian Prognosis, the single and AoE barriers respectively, are lowered to 1.5 seconds each. Putting the cast times for Scholar and Sage next to each other, you can see it makes no real difference. The main advantage this gives Sage is mobility. You can throw out shields while moving. Mathematically though, this gives Scholar an upper hand in that the recast for Eucrasian Diagnosis or Prognosis comes to 3 seconds, where Scholar's remains 2.4 seconds or wherever you have your spell speed. Moving on to the pure healers, some similarities we can draw. Both have a single target regen and an AoE regen. Both have an AoE damage and heal. Both have a personal buff that reduces cast and recast time, and each have a healing potency buff. They both have a bubble as well. I think the final thing that they have in common is horoscope and plenary indulgence. It's a buff that heals everyone affected with an additional heal when the caster uses an AoE heal. Just like the barrier healers, the bubble for our pure healers are the same but different. White Mage's bubble gets placed on the ground, is a regen for the party members within, and increases hit point recovery via healing actions for everyone inside. Astrologian's bubble is channeled by the caster. While channeled, party members within take 10% less damage, and any party member who steps in for a single tick gain a regen buff that lasts 15 seconds after leaving the bubble. Slight differences. Speaking of differences, the main difference in the two pure healers is Astrologian has a lot of delayed heals, while White Mage has more outright heals. What I'm talking about, as an example, is the Horoscope and Planetary Indulgence I mentioned before. Horoscope from Astrologian gives its heal 30 seconds after it is applied, or when the Astrologian activates it. Meanwhile, Planetary Indulgence from White Mage is applied immediately, and can be applied multiple times. There are other similar abilities with similar effects. Earthly Star and Ass Eyes are two parallels in this same example. Here are some things each can do the other cannot. White Mage's damage AoE has a stun built into it. White Mage has more single target healing than Astrologian, has the only 100% health heal in Benediction, and White Mage can cast a free spell every 30 seconds. Astrologian has more regens than White Mage, can buff a party member or self every 15 seconds, every 2 minutes gives a 6% DPS buff to the party, and has an additional personal buff that potentially gives an MP regen, a haste, and a damage buff all at once. We can already see how the two types are different. I mentioned the pure healers have single target regen, and the barrier healers have a single target shield. This difference between the two types is also what makes all four healers similar. Every healer has a single target and AoE spell for their type, a barrier or a regen. This similarity between the four healers goes further in that the two barrier healers have an AoE regen like the pure healers. Sage has Physis, and Scholar has Whispering Dawn. The pure healers too have a single target barrier like the barrier healers. Astrologian has Celestial Intersection and White Mage has Divine Benison. So all four healers have at least one regen and one barrier. The trade-off here is that the AoE regen for the barrier healers have a longer cooldown and they're off the global cooldown, where the pure healers can cast their regen as much as they like, but they are on the global cooldown. In that same respect, the single target barrier the pure healers have has a longer cooldown and is off the global cooldown, where the barrier healers can cast their single target barrier as much as they like, but they are on the global cooldown. You will also notice all four have a bubble that resembles each other. Also, every healer has 3 damaging abilities that are similar if not the exact same as the others, an AoE, a dot, and a single target spell. Every healer also has a Cure 1, so to speak. Aside from what makes them all similar, each healer has their own identity. Scholar is our pet-using healer that directs the pet to perform healing actions. Beware of your fairy's position. White Mage is the purest of healers with all the instant and big healing, if you like using lilies. Sage has all the barriers and mitigation any party needs. Don't forget to use dark arts for shields. Astrologian is a card-reading fortune teller that can predict when you will need a heal. They're as close to a time mage as we're gonna get. This brings me to the 2 styles of play. I was told way back when all we had were White Mage and Scholar. Barrier healing is proactive while pure healing is reactive. To elaborate, Scholar and Sage get the most use out of their barrier heals when cast before damage is taken. Proactive. Pure healers get the most out of their regens when applied after damage is taken. Reactive. Picture this. Your Savage Raid group has a barrier and a pure healer. A room-wide AoE is about to hit the party. The barrier healer throws up a barrier before the hit. After the hit, the pure healer applies a regen. Not only did the party take less damage due to the barrier, but the regen is all they needed to get full. Or maybe the pure healer used one of their bigger AoE heals. Now, I'm not saying pre-casting a regen is bad or casting a barrier after. Well, no, that is bad. A barrier does no good if it's not getting hit. Unless, of course, you're Sage. They have Pepsis. A final note for those taking up the healer role. You are a healer first and a DPS second. A dead DPS does no DPS. Keep everyone safe and healthy. There you have it. The two different types of healing at a glance. You've already decided to be a healer. All that's left is to ask yourself, do I want to prevent damage with barriers and shields, or do I want to heal everyone after they take the damage? Are you proactive or reactive? Whether you're just starting out as a healer or have been healing since 2.0, leave a comment and tell me your thoughts on healers in Final Fantasy XIV. Which healer are you going to try first? Which healer is your favorite? I would love to know. As for me, I'm maining Astrologian this expansion. Well, you've made it to the very end. I hope you all found this video interesting. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this with a friend and subscribe for more of my content. There's more planned for the future. Thanks for watching. Have a safe journey.